So, good evening, friends. This is our 36th Facebook live on our Facebook group, and I hope all of you are enjoying it. Today, we have with us Dr. Abhijit Nair. He is a great academician. He works in the Basavataram American Cancer Hospital and Research Institute at Hyderabad. He is consultant anesthesiologist there, and his passion is research. He has published almost 92 research paper in PubMed Index published journals, and it has got 250 citations. His area of interest is acute pain, regional anesthesia, operative medicine, onco-anesthesia, and medical writing. He is reviewer in IJ, JOSCP, Journal of Pain Research, BMC Anesthesiology, and Frontiers in Pharmacology. So he is going to talk about regional anesthesia and cancer recurrence. This is a very interesting topic. Regional anesthesia help in preventing cancer recurrence. But do we have any evidence? So Abhijit is going to talk about this evidence. So I welcome Dr. Abhijit and I hand over to Dr. Abhijit. Please, Dr. Abhijit.
Yeah. Thank you, Hetal sir. I thank TAS Facebook group and Dr. Hetal Vadera sir for giving me this opportunity on speaking on this topic, renal anesthesia and cancer recurrence. So what's the evidence? This topic is actually quite close to my heart because I work in a cancer institute and there are a lot of research papers and all that keep coming now and then discussing this very important topic. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank my dear friend Dr. Rajendra Sahu, who 2 years back had asked me to speak on this topic at Durgapur, West Bengal. That was in 2018. So last year I had the opportunity to talk on the same topic at Brunei Darussalam, where there was the ASEAN Society of Anesthesia. They had their World Congress, and now in 2020 I am talking in front of all of you guys on Facebook Live. So what I have seen is, if you see, if I go through my previous two presentations and now, there are a lot of changes in the sense there has been a lot of work that has been done in the last 2 years. That a lot of things have changed. Lot of evidences, positive, negative, have come out. So I feel every year when if at all I get a chance to talk on this, I would be having something new to offer, some controversies solved, some controversies created, and yes, that's how the learning is basically. So welcome to greetings from Hyderabad. I work at Basavatarakam Indo-American Cancer Hospital and Research Institute. It's a 500-bedded tertiary cancer center. I have nothing to disclose. There are no conflicts of interest. So In this talk, I would like to cover a little bit of oncosurgery, its implications, perioperative pain and regional anesthesia for cancer surgeries, pain and its impact on cancer recurrence, regional anesthesia and its effect on outcome, and a few slides I would like to dedicate on systemic local anesthetic, basically lidocaine, and its importance in cancer recurrence. I know this is a very bland topic as such, but I have tried to make it a bit interesting by adding some colors, by adding some animation, so that somebody who is listening doesn't doze off during this 35-40 minutes of the time that I would like to take for completing this presentation. However, I would not cover the topic like general anesthesia and cancer recurrence. It is a different topic altogether. It would need a separate session basically, because I cannot incorporate regional and general anesthesia and cancer recurrence. Opioid and cancer recurrence is a hot topic, which is actually, there are a lot of evidence that perioperative opioids can actually provide a nidus for cancer recurrence. I won't be talking much about multimodal analgesia and its role in oncosurgical pain management. However, I have dedicated a few slides just to highlight a certain points. I won't be talking about cancer immunology because it is a vast topic and I am not the person to talk about immunology here. And animal studies, which forms the basis of research or forms the basis of hypothesis, I won't be talking about that. So there are certain alarming figures which I would like to disclose over here. This was like given by WHO. In the year 2018, they released a report that there are 18.1 million cases of cancer diagnosed all over the world, out of which almost 50% were cancer-related deaths. And last year, it was there were 21.7 million newly diagnosed cancer cases, and almost 70% patients had cancer-related death. So as you can see, as the population is increasing, as the diagnostic modalities are increasing, lot of diagnosis, and there are a lot of other factors like lifestyle, genetic, addiction, etc. Your work area, occupational hazards, and all, which are all either in total, either one by one or put together, are contributing to cancer. I cannot go ahead by mentioning what is the definition of cancer recurrence. So National Cancer Institute has given this definition. What they say is that cancer that has recurred or come back, usually after a period of time during which the cancer could not be detected. So this period of time is after surgery or after a chemo or a radiation which has been used to treat that particular malignancy. The cancer could come back to the same place as the original. For example, breast cancer, which has now on imaging after a few months has come back to the same place, or any other place in the body. This any other place is what is described as local recurrence or distal metastasis. This is the definition of recurrent cancer. There are certain complicated terminologies which are used in all the kind of research which deals with regional anesthesia and cancer recurrence, which actually confuses the people who are doing the systematic review and meta-analysis. So terminologies are disease-free survival, overall survival, recurrence-free survival, and relapse-free survival. So this more or less, if you go through the definition, it would mean little bit of the same, but several papers, if there are 5 papers per year, one paper would talk about disease-free survival, another would talk about overall survival, some of them would talk about relapse-free survival. So at the end, when we review the existing data, we get a bit confused. Now what's happening? So this is one of the reason of complicating this particular analysis. So this is what I was talking about. Local recurrence is recurrence that happens at the site of excision or where the disease was treated with a radiation or a chemo. Regional recurrence is towards the ipsilateral lymph node or to the contralateral lymph node, and distant recurrence is to other organs, for example, to lungs, to liver, to brain, to vertebral column, to skeletal system. This is what is called as distal recurrence. So coming to oncosurgery and its impact on recurrence. Oncosurgery basically is a very complicated affair, as you can see from this slide. It is something like that. Because if you take 2 surgeries, similar, for example, ovarian surgery, no 2 surgeries are similar. There would be an extra resection in one surgery, a lesser resection in another. So the standardization is a big problem as far as oncosurgeries are concerned. The patients per se are very challenging, especially somebody who has undergone a chemo radiation before. As we all know, post-op neoadjuvant chemotherapy and radiation, it changes the physiology of the patient in total. It causes lot of physiological changes in the body. It leads to underlying immunosuppression. The malignancy per se causes lot of malnutrition. There would be existing comorbidities, and the surgeries offered are at times very complex. Prolonged surgery, they will be on ventilator, they will develop post-operative ileus, surgical site infection, and ventilator-associated pneumonia, atelectasis, etc. Along with that, because of the nature of the surgery, they develop a lot of neuroendocrine changes and cytokine-mediated changes in the body, which actually affects the perioperative outcome of the patient. I would try to cover all these topics in brief. After that, we can deal with the relevant papers. As you can see in this slide, surgical trauma. When a patient is offered a surgery, it could be either general or a combination of general or regional. So any surgical stress leads to neuroendocrine response, which generates cortisol and catecholamine. There are a lot of metabolic changes like proteolysis, hyperglycemic response. The natural killer cell and the T helper cell, which basically otherwise are protective in nature because of the use of anesthetics and because of the surgery per se, their function is inhibited. And there is a post-operative hypercoagulable state. But if you, as you can see over here, this is what happens with general anesthesia. But if you add regional anesthesia, most of the things are attenuated quite a significant extent. Neuroendocrine response is reduced, metabolic response is reduced, there is better sugar control, there is preservation of natural killer cell and T helper cell function. And even the postoperative hypercoagulable state can also be addressed by adding a regional anesthesia technique. As you can see here, the journey of a cancer cell, it starts once it is decided that a cell is going to now undergo a malignant conversion. It will be posted for surgery. They will have a surgery, and then because of surgery, they will have inflammation, immunosuppression. There will be a lot of like angiogenesis because of inhalation anesthetic, because of opioids, and what happens during oncosurgery is what a surgeon can do is he or she can remove the macroscopic disease, which means what is visible to the eye can be removed. What is not visible, it is called as microscopic disease. So, though this microscopic disease is later on treated with either a chemotherapy or a radiation or a combination of both. So that is what is called as a minimal residual disease. So what is left, if they try to remove that also, it will cause a lot of harm, and technically it is not possible. So if because of all the surgical stress, immunosuppression and all, what happens is if it is not treated with adjuvant therapy in an appropriate time, what it will cause is it will cause local recurrence, and later on it will cause metastasis. So this is the crux of recurrence basically. Now a few slides on anesthetic agents basically. I would talk about volatile anesthetic, one or two slides only, not more than that. We all know about our inhalation anesthetic, that it impairs impure immune function, which is mediated through neutrophils, macrophages, dendritic cells, T cells, and natural killer cells. Natural killer cell per se has ability of protection basically. It would kill the damaged cells basically. But because of the immune function lowering effect mediated by volatile anesthetic, they have a suppression, and because of this, there is it provides a nidus for the cells to grow at a later date. Apoptosis is something which is again a protective mechanism, but volatile anesthetic has the ability to interfere with apoptosis also. Coming to opioids again, they have a problem. Like it has been proven in animal and certain human studies also that they facilitate angiogenesis. For example, if the disease cells, cancer cells are left around, or if they are like spread because of handling and all these things, it provides a nidus for angiogenesis. Angiogenesis means it provides blood supply to develop at those near those particular cells, and later on it helps in. It leads to metastasis. It again, even opioids, they interfere with cell apoptosis. I am sure now there is a great enthusiasm regarding opioid-free anesthesia, and whoever are interested, I'm sure they must be knowing Dr. Barry Friedberg. He is a founder of Goldilocks Association, and his work on opioid-free, opioid-sparing anesthesia and TIVA, total intravenous anesthesia, is mind-blowing. Somebody who follows him on LinkedIn and all will come to know what great work he has done over a period of 20 to 30 years. But having said that, opioid sparing is fine, but for so as to have opioid-free anesthesia, many people are like having clinicians are having something which is called as opiophobia, like they are scared to use opioid. But what we should understand is opioids are they. It is not like a poison or anything. We have to use it cautiously, sparingly, as and when required, and should not load patients with opioid basically. So I feel totally avoiding opioid. I think it could be unethical in our part. Because I mean we are not doing justice in providing pain. We can have opioid sparing, but totally avoiding again in a general anesthetic, I think it is a bit too early to say that. As we all know, our one of our members of our society, Dr. Tushar Choksi, has created this Indian Society for Opioid Pain Anesthesia. I am sure in subsequent time we will get a lot of interesting literature on this topic basically. But this is about opioid that I was telling that it causes recurrence, it causes angiogenesis, etc. But there are certain studies which have popped up, which I have gone through in the last couple of weeks. This is what these studies say. They say that opioid in small doses can prevent inflammation and inhibit tumor growth. Now, this is totally, I mean, a bit of confusing basically. It has also been proven that they also allow cancer to escape from the suppressing action of immune system. But this happens when you use low doses or short-term use of opioid. Now, again, the papers have not described what is low dose and what is the duration, which they call as short-term, because what they say is it can have a positive effect on the immune system. So there is a lot of gray area in this. One more thing that I would like to highlight is in one of the recent review articles published in RAPM, it was somewhere in early 2019. What they have said is the problems are with the morphine basically. The synthetic opioids like fentanyl, etc. They don't have that much of immunosuppression and all. But again, that is again generated from animal data, and I cannot say with confidence at this moment that it has a really lower immune suppression effect. So coming to the topic per se, then regional anesthesia and cancer recurrence. So is it possible, like Dr. Hetal said in the beginning, if you add regional anesthesia, it would really help prevent in cancer recurrence? Yes, theoretically, yes, but is this what the existing data says? So let us see. Regional anesthesia, as we all know, is associated with better immunological and stress outcomes in patients undergoing major oncological surgery. I totally agree with this. I cannot take this presentation forward from here without having a sentence or two about Dr. Daniel Sessler. He works at Cleveland Clinic, and he was the person who started this hypothesis of regional anesthesia preventing cancer in 2008. He is an exemplary clinician and academician. As you can see over here, he has almost 3,000 citations per year and almost 40,000 citations till date. So, I mean, I was so overwhelmed by his work when I reviewed his work on PubMed that I couldn't stop myself, but I wrote an email to him congratulating him on his achievements and all this thing, and wanted to take his best regards and best wishes for my future, whatever is left. And I was very happy to see that in a couple of hours he sent me a reply, and also he sent me one of his recently published paper in Lancet, basically, which I have also included later on in this presentation subsequently. So this was the first paper basically by Dr. Sessler et al., where they have published a methodology of a multicentric randomized trial where there were 1,100 patients which they followed up prospectively over 5 years. It was basically a hypothesis generating paper targeting breast cancer. But there are certain problems when this particular hypothesis is explored, because the stage of the disease could be varied. I mean, somebody who has been posted for a surgery, like there are a lot of classifications, 2A, 2B, 3C, 3A, 1B. I mean, this is a lot of cancer-related classification. So to have an exact staging for a particular surgery and then randomizing it is something a bit difficult. Age and comorbidities could be standardized, but again, we give straightforward numbers like ASA1, ASA2, or ASA3. Again, age is something which can also be analyzed and compared. But again, these are two things which actually can make analysis difficult if you don't have an adequate sample size. Compliance with the clinicians to follow up the patient over a period of years and all is again a problem. As I said in the beginning, there are a lot of complicated and unclear definitions. So, like, this is what makes understanding a bit difficult, especially with the anesthesia and perioperative care. And there is something called as publication bias. Basically, this happens. This bias is experienced when somebody writes a systematic review and meta-analysis, basically. Adding to that, we complicate the studies and the analysis further. Some clinicians use morphine, some use fentanyl, sufentanil, whatever is available. Now it is an era of multimodal analgesia. We keep adding something or the other, magnesium sulfate, alpha-2 agonists like dexmedetomidine, clonidine, ketamine, NSAIDs. So even when a retrospective study is done, there is no standardization whether an inhalation was used or a total intravenous anesthetic got used. So this way, we actually, especially during multicentric trial and all, these are the problems which researchers they face. This is one of our papers published recently in Indian Journal of Cancer, where we have tried to highlight the problems faced with dexmedetomidine in certain cancers. I mean, I'm talking about breast cancer basically, because breast cancer has alpha-2 receptor, and if we use alpha-2 agonist in the surgical care of the patient as a multimodal analgesic, we are actually providing fodder for the minimal residual disease which is left at the end of surgery. Actually, theoretically, in animal studies, it has been found to grow exponentially. And human studies are presently ongoing, and we will come to know maybe in subsequent years. Now, coming to NSAID, NSAIDs are very popular, and when there is no contraindication, it works very well. So now you can see this cohort study with around 2,300 patients, and that is a prospective study. So what they have analyzed and found is perioperative use of NSAID was associated with reduced risk of cancer recurrence after colorectal surgery. Yeah, sounds really good over here. So we have something which really works. But you can see in the next slide. So this is a paper in somewhere around 2015-16, where they have said that NSAID administration post colorectal surgery increases the risk of anastomosis. It is a systematic review and meta-analysis. So there is a caution of using NSAID. Now we have a recommendation of using it, and there's a recommendation of not using it. So now what to do? I mean, only time will tell that. So the present scene regarding association of regional anesthesia and cancer results are quite conflicting. Results are quite inconclusive. There's a lot of bias at different levels. Basically, there is a dearth of prospective literature. As of now, there are only 2 prospective studies which have explored the association of regional anesthesia and cancer recurrence. I would show you the slides in subsequently. Standardization, as I had mentioned earlier, it is a major issue. I mean, it complicates the analysis and understanding of the perioperative physician so much that at the end we remain confused. Cancers could be of different tumor biology, different staging. That is another problem. And when we are talking about major surgery, for example, colorectal surgery or ovarian surgery, there is a problem with standard. And what I mean is, a cytoreductive surgery for an ovarian cancer could mean a simple hysterectomy, salpingo-oophorectomy, and omentectomy in one patient. In second patient, it could mean a large bowel resection. In third patient, it could mean large and small bowel. In some patient, they undergo splenectomy. In some patient, they undergo tail of pancreas excision. In several patients, they undergo diaphragmatic stripping. They have a stormy postoperative course. So this way, it is very difficult to compare different set of patients, and it takes years to have standardization, and maybe at the end you will not be able to have a proper analysis also. Coming to bias could be at the level of study per se. Bias could be at the level of outcome. There are, as I said in the beginning, there are several types of cancer, different biology, different staging, different surgery. It also adds to the bias. There is a selection bias, there is a recruitment bias, and there is something called as publication bias. Publication bias is the bias which a researcher experiences at the time of analyzing the data which is available. So this is something called as, what you can see here is a funnel plot. On one side are the positive data, and on one side are the negative data. If you have a reasonably equal number of positive and negative data, you don't have a publication bias, as you can see in this funnel basically. But here, if you can see here on the right side, there is a lot of data, on the left side is less. So this will add to the publication data. So which means that if all of the studies are showing like regional anesthesia doesn't have any benefit in cancer recurrence, and there are only 2 studies showing that it has benefit. So if you try to do a systematic review meta-analysis, there will be a bias. At the end, again, what the conclusion would be: we need further studies, adequately powered studies, multicentric studies, standardized studies to come to a conclusion. So this will keep going on. So I would like to share certain pertinent slides related to recent papers in the last decade, basically. This is from Keta et al. So where they have said that perioperative period leads to immunosuppression, catecholamine surge, and inflammation. So this is what attacks the cells which are left over at the end of surgery, which is called as minimal residual disease. And if these things are not addressed intraoperatively or perioperatively, it could lead to recurrence. Now, this is a complicated slide, but you can see over here. These are the 3 things from our side, from the anesthesia side, basically: opioids, inhalational agents, perioperative steroids, which could actually affect immunosuppression, angiogenesis, and growth factors. But the good thing is we have certain really good things like regional anesthesia. Propofol TY, as I would mention later on, propofol has anti-tumor effect also, and it protects the immunity to quite a significant extent. Local anesthetic, by local anesthetic, I mean systemic local anesthetic. I would touch on this topic subsequently. And use of NSAID, as I had said, it works well in colorectal surgery, but then there are issues. So there has to be a good balance between minimum use of opioids, use of multimodal analgesia, reduce the inhalational agents, and use all these things in judiciously. So again, similar slide, but by different reviewers, basically, different authors, basically. Again, it's a meta-analysis of some 12 or 14 papers. What they have said is RA and inflammation. RA affects, it interferes with ongoing inflammation by reducing surgical stress, reducing surgical pain, preserves neuroendocrine function, and reduces cytokine-mediated stress response. So have a look at this slide. Patient comes for surgery. They have systemic inflammation followed by immunosuppression, and later on the cells which are left over because of opioids and all these things, they have angiogenesis. So what do we have to offer over here? We have a very small window of opportunity over here, and that is adding a regional anesthesia technique. We all know volatile anesthetics, opioids, what all problem they can cause. So amongst all this, there is only one solution that we have, and that is also, as of now, is like there are a lot of conflicting data. But then there is no harm, and as clinicians, we are good in regional anesthesia techniques. So wherever possible, we should try to use this window of opportunity and provide help to the patient. So this is the, now everyone knows about, last year I had to explain this slide to some extent, but I think now because of the COVID-19 pandemic, everyone knows about the cytokine storm, so I need not talk about. So these are the cytokines which are released in the system after major oncological surgeries. Regional anesthesia definitely preserves immunity by modulating sympathetic activity. It reduces intraoperative anesthetic and opioid consumption. Thereby, it affects, reduces the angiogenesis and immunity and all, and it preserves the action of natural killer cells, which is actually very important. As we all know, natural killer has a important function of immunosurveillance. And among the anesthetic agents, what preserves immunosurveillance of natural killer cells are propofol, lidocaine. Again, this is systemic lidocaine, not epidural or peripheral nerve block lidocaine, NSAIDs and beta blockers. But there are agents which suppresses the action of natural killer cells, as we all know: opioids, inhalational anesthetics, alpha-2 agonist, and ketamine. Ketamine is a very good analgesic part of multimodal analgesia, but what it has been shown that it reduces, in animal studies, it has been shown that it reduces the natural killer function, and in fact, it actually increases the perioperative inflammation, especially after oncosurgery. And moreover, if pain is not addressed, stress response is not addressed, and systemic temperature is not corrected, these are again suppressors of natural killer function. What I want to say is there are so many factors. The perioperative period is so complicated. that it is very difficult like to prove that by adding one regional anesthesia technique will really affect the recurrence and all, because there are so many other factors. One regional anesthesia technique although can provide a lot of advantage, but to address all these issues is a bit impossible. Uh, Similarly, I have spoken about this RA and its effect on preventing angiogenesis. These are the culprits basically which leads to or promotes angiogenesis: vascular endothelial growth factor, cytokine TNF alpha, matrix metalloproteinase, prostaglandin E2, and cyclooxygenase enzymes. So you add your RA, you cause interfere with the sympathetic activity, and these are the culprits that could be addressed. So these are two papers. One is published in 2012 in anesthesiology, where there was a cohort of 42,000 patients who underwent resection of colon cancer, and they have followed it up for over 5 years using epidural in one group and with only general anesthetic in another group. What they found here is that later use of chemotherapy or radiation therapy did not differ in those receiving epidurals and those who did not. This was again a conflicting data, and this is in 2015 by Sun et al., where they said that it was a retrospective data basically, where they said that perioperative RA may improve overall survival. Again, a confusing terminology. Overall survival, it would help the patient to live more, possibly. But there was no positive association of regional anesthesia and cancer-free survival. So cancer recurred at some point of time. But whether it prolonged life and all, that was again not very clear from this retrospective data. I have just shown these 2 or 3 tables where I have tried to show which in which particular cancer surgeries regional anesthesia, especially epidural, has shown benefit and where it has shown there is no benefit. As you can see over here, the green one have shown benefit in overall survival or cancer recurrence, and the red one there was no benefit, and the yellow one it was a bit marginal or equivocal or not very clear. So there is no like there are no less very few studies and all, but unfortunately all of them are retrospective studies. We all know the problem with the retrospective studies. Selection bias will be there. There will not be proper standardization. So whatever is the conclusion, we have to take it with a pinch of salt. It is very difficult to convince somebody based on conclusions which are drawn from retrospective data. Again, these are particular cell lines, basically breast, prostate, and all, where it has been shown that paravertebral analgesia did not show a benefit on recurrence or overall survival and all. So this is another slide where in certain patients, for example, prostate, they have shown that there is marginal benefit. Intraoperative in ovarian also there is marginal benefit, but in certain cases, head and neck cases, cervical, there was no benefit. Again, if you can see certain cases, certain studies have a decent sample size, almost 1,000. Certain they have 30, 40, 50. Again, small sample size. Retrospective study. Again, difficult to comprehend and difficult to apply. So these are certain important papers where there was, although retrospective, but they have used proper statistical test and did a detailed retrospective analysis. The one was in RAPM by Gonzalez et al. It was they found that there was no data to support or refute the use of paravertebral for reduction in cancer recurrence or improvement in cancer survival. This was for breast surgeries. Again, by Keta et al. In RAPM. Again, for breast surgeries, retrospective data, so not associated with longer survival. It is more or less the same for most of the things. Everything is in red. So whatever they analyzed and came out with the conclusion, theoretically there was no benefit actually. So now this is again a meta-analysis by Ravi Grandi et al., where they have studied 28 studies after excluding 72 studies. Again, they found that there was no overall benefit in overall survival. They have used a lot of definitions: overall survival, recurrence-free survival, biochemical survival, which means tumor markers and all. And what they have suggested is well-designed studies are required, which is actually the need of the hour. So this is the study which Dr. Sessler had shared with me. It was published in Lancet somewhere in mid 2019. They have analyzed, they have recruited almost 1,000 patients in each group. One patient received general regional anesthesia, paravertebral block, and propofol. And the second group, they received opioids, remifentanil with volatile anesthetic, sevoflurane. As you can see over here, this is a Kaplan-Meier curve. As you can see over here on the x-axis, there is time after surgery, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 7 years, and you can see over here breast cancer recurrence in percentage. So if you see at the end of 5 years, the blue is general anesthetic and the red is renal anesthetic. So this is 5 years, and you just try to come over here. If you see at the end of 5 years, it is somewhere around 11 to 12%. Overall survival number of patients that started over here, say 1,000 patients in each group. Out of that, at the end of 5 years, 10 to 12% in both either groups, they had recurrence. So what it means is adding a regional anesthesia technique perioperatively. This is what was their conclusion, that it really doesn't help in cancer recurrence-free survival at the end of 5 years. Later on, as you can see over here, they have followed it up to 7 years. So at the end of 6 years, both the lines, they actually merge with each other over here. So there's actually no difference. So what they interpreted is renal anesthesia, paravertebral block, and propofol did not reduce breast cancer recurrence after potential curative surgery with volatile anesthetic, sevoflurane, and opioids. The frequency and severity of persistent incisional pain was unaffected by whatever anesthetic was used. So what they suggested is clinicians can use renal or general anesthetic with respect to breast cancer recurrence and persistent incisional pain. So now this is a prospective study. Now all the bias has been eliminated. It has a robust sample size, almost 1,000 patients in each group. So this is, but having said that, this is regarding breast surgery. So subsequent studies, now what we are waiting is for colorectal surgery, similar, well designed, adequately powered for colorectal esophageal surgeries, lung surgeries, head and neck surgeries, ovarian surgeries. It's going to take a long time. It might take a decade or so to have a robust data and analysis. So this is another paper by Miles et al., which was published in 2011. Again, this was the first prospective randomized control trial, which had almost 446 patients, 220 odd patients in each group. As you can see over here, the Kaplan-Meier curve, they followed them for over 12 years, and this is the survival. It starts from here, 100% or 1, where all patients were alive. And if you can see at the end of 5 years over here, this is the point, 5 years. So almost 42%, 43% patient had recurrence, which was comparable. The blue is no epidural, and the red dotted line is epidural. So it is more or less the same. There is no difference in the curve, which again means that use of epidural block in abdominal surgery for cancer is not associated with cancer-free survival. So again, we have a data. Reasonably, maybe it would appear a bit underpowered and all, but they did the power calculation and all, it was all fine. 200 odd patients is quite a decent sample size, and they have well standardized the patient selection. So we all know we take Cochrane database systematic review as one of the standards, especially for planning our protocols and all these things. So as early as 2014, Cochrane database, they had concluded that evidence for the benefit of RA techniques on tumor recurrence is inadequate. An increasing number of prospective randomized trials are ongoing, and maybe it could add to more information. We have information from 2 RCTs as of now. Lot of RCTs, if you go to clinicaltrials.gov, there are a lot of trials going on lung cancer, colorectal cancer, hepatic carcinomas and all. So I think it's just a matter of time. Another paper which I found, it is a study protocol basically by Dr. Anjali Chabra et al. From AIIMS New Delhi, where they have published a protocol on use of paravertebral anesthesia with or without sedation versus GA for women undergoing breast cancer surgery. I tried to search for this final paper, but I think the study is still going on, and they have not published the data as of now, is what is my understanding. Now coming to lidocaine, I am talking about systemic lidocaine. Systemic lidocaine, we all know, and that it has significant anti-inflammatory effect in vivo and vitro. It has anti-metastatic effect, which has been proven in animals. It has an impact on cell-mediated immunity, by which I mean it preserves natural killer cell function and lymphocyte function. So, if you add systemic lidocaine, IV lidocaine, 1.5 to 2 milligrams per kg, perioperatively, it could really have a good impact, reduce PUNV, reduce anesthetic, volatile anesthetic consumption, and reduced opioid consumption and all. But right now, the data is a bit anecdotal in humans at least. A lot of studies are going on. The anti-inflammatory effect of lidocaine is by blocking voltage-gated sodium channels, and there are a lot of voltage-gated sodium channels expressed in certain malignancies. So that is the reason why it has anti-tumor effect also. So we just have to wait. As we all know, IRAS also advocates use of lidocaine, especially when there is no renal anesthesia technique added for particular surgery. Especially, I am talking about neuraxial discipline. Intraoperatively, running a lidocaine infusion actually helps a lot. We are also undergoing one of our RCT is under progress where we are using systemic lidocaine for laparoscopic hysterectomies. But what we use for regional anesthesia, we use bupivacaine, ropivacaine, levibupivacaine. In Middle East countries, they use mepivacaine. But we don't use lidocaine per se as a sole anesthetic in regional anesthesia. It is used for test dose, it is used for infiltrating, or maybe it is used for systemic. So when certain papers say, certain animal data say that if there is that systemic local anesthetic can have anti-tumor effect, is it because of absorption? Is it because of systemic absorption of epidural or paravertebral local anesthetic that is injected? We really don't know. We know the systemic effect in the form of reduced sympathetic activity, preservation of neuroendocrine response, and reduced stress response. But the contribution of systemic absorption, we don't know as of now. There are certain issues with using perioperative lidocaine. Like as I said, we don't use it epidurally, we don't use it intrathecally. For other blocks also, we don't use. And we cannot use if there is an epidural infusion with bupivacaine, ropivacaine on floor. We can't use systemic lidocaine at the same time because of we all know the problem, local anesthetic systemic toxicity. Another thing is right now we don't know what is the systemic serum levels of lidocaine which has anti-tumor effect. It has not been defined yet as of now in humans. That is why I'm saying human data as of now is anecdotal. Regarding systemic absorption of LA, we all know when we give an intercostal block and all, systemic absorption is quite high. But most of the times it is accepted and non-toxic levels. But again, serum levels of long-acting local anesthetic like levobupivacaine, bupivacaine, ropivacaine for anti-cancer, anti-metastatic, anti-inflammatory effect. It is as of now in 2020, it is not defined. So we all know about this, like rate of absorption of local anesthetic. I have just put this slide to as a support slide for the previous slide, basically. So last year we had a onco-anesthesia conference in Hyderabad. So we have one of the faculty, Dr. Anil Gupta, where he mentioned about their use of intraperitoneal local anesthetic, and they were working extensively on that. So I found one of these papers, which is a small sample size, 40 patients in each group, 20 patients control, 20 patient intervention. What they did is they injected intraperitoneal ropivacaine. At the end of the surgery, they put catheters and continued intraperitoneal ropivacaine for 72 hours. And later on, as you can see from here in the box and whisker plot over here, this is intraperitoneal local anesthetic and this is placebo. As you can see over here, days to chemotherapy, the median, as you can see, it's around 22 days here. And with placebo, you can see the median is around 30 days, which for this sample size, it was statistically significant. So what they felt is there could be early days to chemotherapy after surgery, after extensive ovarian surgery, if intraperitoneal local anesthetic are used. But again, this is a small sample size, and as he had mentioned last year, they are like working extensively on this multicentric trials and all. This is a Swedish group basically, and they are planning a multicentric trial. Maybe we would come to know later on whether it helps. Now, this is a concept which was introduced in 2014 by the team at MD Anderson Cancer Center. One of the authors over here, Dr. Vijay Gotamula, he has also attended our conference last year, and he enlightened us regarding return to intended oncology treatment, or RIOT. Basically, what it means is if a patient undergoes a major resection and later on he needs some kind of oncological treatment, if the patient is not able to attend, or rather for whatever reason not able to undergo RIOT at a stipulated time, so that because of the perioperative immunosuppression and all the other effects, we are extending the time, we are giving time for the leftover cancer cells to proliferate, and in that case whatever oncological treatment is used after surgery, it might not help, and it could lead to actually it could interfere with recurrence free survival. So these are the RIOT therapies which are available. There could be adjuvant surgeries, uh, bone marrow transplantation, post-operative chemotherapy, radiation therapy, targeted chemotherapy, immunotherapy, or hormone therapy. So regarding all the other things, most commonly what is used is chemotherapy and radiation. What happens is a patient undergoes a supramajor surgery, and after that they develop surgical site infection, they develop ventilator associated pneumonia, they have tracheostomy, they have leak, they have re-exploration, and for 1.5 to 2 months either they are in the hospital or they are discharged late and are not in a position because of the extensive hypercatabolic state to attend RIOT. So what happens because of that? They already had a stormy post-operative course where whatever anesthetic agent you have used, with or without regional anesthesia, the recurrence, I mean, theoretically, it is inevitable. So they would go for RIOT late, they would receive the therapies late, and when they are analyzed at the end of 6 months, we have a recurrence. Now, I mean, now the question is, in such situation, whatever you add intraperitoneal local anesthetic, you add epidural local anesthetic, you add paravertebral local anesthetic, continue it for 3 days or 5 days. Is it going to help? I mean, this is a very difficult question, and this is a very pertinent question. So this is the reason. I mean, this is one of the reasons why it is very difficult to, I mean, have this association of regional anesthesia preventing cancer recurrence. Very difficult to prove. The hurdles, as I said, are existing comorbidities. Somebody 70 years with Parkinsonism, coronary artery disease, respiratory cripple. It is very difficult for them to attend RIOT at a stipulated time. Whatever said and done, there will be delay, because if their immunity is not up to the mark, their general condition is not up to the mark, nobody is going to offer them chemo radiation. Patients coming for emergency and urgent surgeries, they invariably have a stormy post-operative course, and they are the candidates where RIOT is not possible. Non-compliance with ERAS, actually ERAS started with colorectal surgeries, but I am not sure how many institutes or how many hospitals are really compliant to the ERAS protocol. Post-operative complications, these are very difficult to predict. Basically, it happens, and when it happens, it causes heavy blood in the patient. It delays discharge. It adds to cost of treatment, hospital-acquired pneumonia, ventilator-associated pneumonia, and of course, patient factors. Because for coming to RIOT, they need money, and if all these factors, complications they have to face, they are not in a position to come back for return to intended oncology. So what happens if RIOT doesn't happen on time? There is a shorter duration of recurrence-free survival. There is shorter overall survival. So what I mean to say is, adding RA here and then exploring whether it leads to recurrence and all or not, it is very difficult. It is maybe you can what can be studied is post-operative opioid consumption, discharge from the hospital, or rather having lesser nausea, vomiting, anastomosis, leak, and all these things. But incorporating, like assessing renal anesthesia and its association to recurrence is something very, very difficult. So in summary, right now there is no level evidence of use of regional anesthesia in oncosurgery and its impact on cancer recurrence or metastasis. The evidence right now is weak because it is from retrospective analysis. Only 2 prospective studies as of now. No proven role of regional anesthesia in offering reduced tumor recurrence or disease-free survival. there are certain problems with upcoming RCTs. If you go to clinicaltrials.gov, you could read the methodology and you can find that having a pure regional anesthetic is very difficult. You will add a general anesthetic somewhere or the other. The cases are mixed, they are not standardized. There is a lot of confusion even there also as far as definitions are concerned. There is difficulty in justifying this in many areas, and it is very difficult to address cancers from various organs and various cells. So to conclude, perioperative period is extremely complex. It's a very complex. There are different issues with malignancies of different cell lines. So what I would like to say is regional anesthesia of any kind, continuous 3 days, 5 days, whatever agent, whatever duration, whatever concentration, its role in cancer recurrence, I think at this moment, looking at the retrospective studies and all, it is quite oversimplified. So we need data from robust prospective studies which might give results, but I still feel the result would still be conflicting. So to prevent recurrence metastasis, there are a lot of patient factors like genetics, burden of the disease, comorbidities, age, baseline immunity. So as of now, the current clinical evidence does not support the use of any anesthesia technique, GA or RA, to improve cancer-related survival after major oncological surgery. But having said that, still the benefits of regional anesthesia are so much in the perioperative period. I would suggest any oncological surgery wherever possible, forget about the data that is available. Add whatever regional anesthesia technique is possible. Say, for example, as simple as a superficial cervical plexus block for a thyroid surgery, any a paravertebral or an erectospinal block for a breast surgery, an epidural for a colorectal surgery. So, patient should not be denied the advantage of whatever best from as a perioperative physician we should do, and we should hope that they have a disease-free, recurrence-free survival. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abhijit. It was a wonderful presentation. As you said, it is a complex phenomenon. Cancer recurrence is a complex phenomenon. And we don't know whether RA helps or not, whether GA is harmful or not. So what is the protocol in your institute? Suppose if you are doing breast surgery or abdominal surgery, what protocol do you follow for anesthesia?
Sir, could you repeat, sir? I couldn't hear the question.
Basically, cancer recurrence is a complex phenomenon, as you said. So, what
Yes,
protocol do you follow in your hospital for just like for a breast surgery? What is the type of anesthesia? Do you use any regional anesthesia, or are you using any TIVA or not, or opioid-free anesthesia or not? What is the protocol at your hospital?
Our sir, as I said, as I said, sir, not opioid-free. We used opioid-sparing anesthesia. We use fentanyl for induction, but we add an erectrospine of late last 2 years from the time erectrospiny has been described. We use erectrospiny plain block for all breast surgeries. We use multimodal analgesic. We use magnesium sulfate. We use NSAID when it is not contraindicated. We add post-operative GABA continuous to the patients, and that is how we manage. And as I said, for for any kind of cancer surgery, we have a regional anesthesia plan in place. Whether it is epidural or thoracic epidural or a lower thoracic epidural. I mean, some kind of or whenever for some reason, say it is a total laparoscopic surgery, we use systemic lidocaine 1.5 to 2 milligrams per kg per hour, and we continue it for 24 hours and all for its anti-tumor effect and all this. Along with that, wherever it is not contraindicated, I mean, except in breast and certain brain surgeries and all, we use alpha-2 agonists like clonidine and all at the time of induction, and as and when required during surgery. So as I said, sir, in my slide, till as of now, it is not very clear. Volatile anesthetic, there are issues, but present data, it says that TIVA has advantages, but still we use inhalation anesthetic for most of our cases, especially patients who have a history of post-operative nausea, vomiting during chemotherapy, and all such cases are the candidates where we used total intravenous anesthetic as of now.
Thank you. Another question is for breast surgery, along with thoracic paravertebral and erector spinae. There are reports of PEX1, PEX2, and SAP block for breast
Yes, sir.
surgery, but
Yeah.
some surgeons. Yeah, but some surgeons have a problem that in giving PEX1 or PEX2, we are going through tumor tissue, or sometimes they find local anesthetic in the plane, so their cautery doesn't work. So do you
Yes,
face
sir.
such problems, and how do you
Yes, sir.
yeah.
There is an interesting story to that. When we started using PEX, so there was a problem. In fact, surgeons were having a lot of problem, like regarding, as you said, regarding cauterization and all these things. They said the planes are lost. I had actually sent a mail to Dr. Blanco also at that time. So, but I didn't get any reply. But I had asked Dr. Diwan at that time. So what he said is, maybe your surgeons are not giving adequate time for the local anesthetic to get absorbed, which was they used to come for surgery after half an hour, which I feel is adequate time. But still, because of the issues that, as you said, rightly mentioned, we stopped actually after some time. We stopped giving PEX block and all, but more or less at the same time, Ferrero et al. They described ESP, and now we told them that now we are not interfering in your field. Now our approach is posterior, so there was no hassle after that. And we have already published one of the RCTs on ESP and mastectomies. So we are having encouraging results.
Another question is from Dr. Dilnaz David Wala. She asked that, do you use opioid patches for post-operative pain and for chronic pain, or
No, sir.
for any recurrence like buprenorphine?
Sir, let me tell you that narcotic patches are not indicated for acute post-operative pain. There is a clear-cut black box warning that it should not be used post-operatively. Although there are papers and all these things, but if you read the FDA alert and all, it should not be used. Perioperative period, there will be a lot of issues in the sense fever and all. So it actually gets absorbed very high if there is a perioperative fever and all these things. So it is actually validated and approved for use in cancer pain, not post-operative. Cancer pain in advanced cancer and all these things, not for post-operative pain. It should not be used, I would say.
So it should be used for chronic pain, right?
It should be used for chronic pains, or especially if there is a problem with taking orals. Basically, if patient is not able to take orals for whatever reason, PONV and all, because it is very costly and not everyone can afford it. It works for 72 hours only. The fentanyl one I am talking about. So as far as possible, by mouth, there is a clear-cut principle by Indian Academy of Palliative Care that as far as possible, go oral, go with proper frequency and all. So it is our practice also in our pain clinic. As far as possible, we use oral morphine and patches very sparingly. And post-operatively, never. No opioid patches post-operative in our units.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Abhijit. This is all for this session. Thank you all.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity, sir.
Thank you very much.